Hi, I think we can begin. Good morning, everyone. Happy Diwali, and thanks for joining us on a Saturday morning. Strategies to save more. This saving is something which is very fundamental and very important. And I think a lot of people today who are investing would already be saving money, right? And this webinar, we hope, will be able to help you in giving you more strategies to help you save more than what you're saving right now. Because in terms of compounding, time comes first, and after that, if you want to reach a bigger corpus, you need to find ways to save more. And something that we have noticed is that a lot of people don't save as much as their saving potential, right? So in this webinar, we look at what are the some mistakes that we may knowingly or unknowingly make, which restricts us from saving up to our potential, and what are the strategies that you can take up to save more, right? So just a second. Yeah, thank you. So let's say your salary just hit your account, right? So now what's the next step? So for many of us, it's either of the two scenarios that you see here, right? More first than the second. So in scenario one, we find ourselves caught up in the excitement, celebrating a new paycheck. We might have wanted to buy a certain, I mean, we might have wanted to buy certain things in the last month. We might have seen certain things. And then now that the salary has come, we would, immediately buy them, right? You splurge on parties, there's impulse shopping, and, there are EMIs that needs to be paid, right? You get into the vicious cycle of debt repayment, right? So this spending approach leaves little to no room for us for actual savings, right? On the other hand, you have the scenario two, which represents the ideal savings mindset. So here we make the deliberate choices. We establish a routine that prioritizes saving and planning and setting a steady course of financial stability. So one of the reasons why we would actually go for, why scenario one is more prominent is because that's easier to do, right? And that there is instant gratification. But in terms of scenario two, that's difficult to do, and you will have to wait for delayed gratification, right? But the ideal scenario to go for would be the second scenario. So now let's look at what are some of the common mistakes. The next slide. Yeah. So what are some of the common mistakes that people make while saving, right? So the first one is, of course, falling in the trap of EMIs. This is one of the most common mistakes, that is the EMI trap, right? So many of us find it easy to sign up for loans and credit options with affordable looking monthly installments. Of course, when you look at a larger amount and then you break it down into monthly installment, it obviously looks smaller and it looks affordable. Therefore, what we do is we end up in an EMI trap, right? But these EMIs can quickly add up. So the more you commit to these small monthly payments, the less free cash you have each month to allocate towards saving or investing. So this debt cycle can be hard to break, and it can prevent you from real wealth accumulation, right? So a large portion of your income goes straight into debt repayment instead of savings. And the second one would be saving too much in the beginning without any goals. So this is something that we have noticed in people, right? So another common mistake is we save aggressively without setting clear, achievable goals. We don't know what we are saving for, right? So you just save for the sake of saving. So what you do is often people will start saving large amounts right away, and they aim for the highest possible savings rate. When this intention is good, this approach can be counterproductive. So how? Without specific goals, this initial enthusiasm can lead to burnout or frustration if the financial needs change or the savings become too restrictive, right? So it's essential to have a purpose behind your savings, like building an emergency fund or saving for a house or investing for retirement, so that your efforts feel meaningful and sustainable. Another thing that people don't usually have is they invest, but they forget one of the most important contingencies, which is the emergency fund. So emergency fund, ideally you should have like 6 to 10 months of your monthly expenses as an emergency fund, which people skip, right? So an emergency fund will act as a financial safety net. So it will cover your unexpected expenses like your medical bills or your car repairs or your temporary loss of income, right? So skipping the emergency fund is a risky mistake. So without any emergency fund, you won't be able to fund any unexpected expense, right? Any unexpected cost. It can force you to dip into other savings or your investments, or if you don't have that, you could even be in debt, right? So it'll undo much of your financial progress, right? So Yeah, as I said, you need, so how much should you have as an emergency reserve? You should have around 6 to 10 months of your monthly expenses. That is minimum 6 to 10 months of your monthly expenses set as an emergency reserve, right? So yeah, and it needs to be saved in an easily accessible account. So, and it needs to be liquid so that it provides you the peace of mind and financial stability when any such emergency arises, right? And third common mistake that we see people doing is the unnecessary spending fast. So some people believe that a spending fast where they restrict nearly all expenses is an effective way to save money quickly, right? So what they do is they will be like, they will go weeks and weeks together without spending anything, right? So what happens here is that you will be able to save some amount. It will lead to short-term savings, but it often backfires over time. So it is unsustainable. This approach can feel unsustainable and it can lead to binge spending once the fast is over, very much like your restrictive dieting, right? So instead of drastically cutting all expenses, one should aim for a balanced spending plan that allows for both saving and reasonable discretionary spending, right? So this helps you to build a consistent long-term saving habit without feeling deprived, right? And the next one, of course, is forgetting to save. This actually might sound surprising, but many people simply forget to save. Life's day-to-day demand, or it combined with the convenience of digital payment options today can lead people to prioritize immediate expenses over putting money aside. So without a structured savings plan or automation, saving becomes an afterthought, right? You sometimes forget it and you might not end up saving at all. So by the time you think about it, there might not be enough left to save. So to avoid this, you need to consider, you can consider automating your savings, like setting up a system where a portion of your income automatically transfers to a savings or investment account each month right after your paycheck is credited. So because it's automated, you don't have to like do anything from your side. It gets automatically. So there is no risk of forgetting to save, right? So these are some of the common mistakes that people do, while saving, right? Let's move to the next slide. Now, yeah, so why has it become increasingly hard for people to save? Why is it, difficult for people to like save money nowadays? So the first one, there are quite a few reasons here. Let's just elaborate on each of them. So the first one is mimetic desires. So what does it mean? It's actually a concept where our desires are shaped by observing what others have or do, right? To put it very simply, Chenvi, right? In today's world, social media and advertising constantly expose us to other people's lifestyle and possessions, creating a cycle of comparison, right? So this can lead to a feeling pressure to match others' spending habits, from dining out frequently to buying the latest gadgets because others haven't, right? So this constant comparison can cause people to spend beyond their means to keep up. So this will leave less room in their budgets for saving, right? So it's very important to resist these external influences and set personal financial goals. And this, by doing this, you will be able to counteract this impulse, right? And today you have credit cards, and now you have other digital buy now pay later options as well, right? So with options like this, like credit cards and buy now pay later schemes, your temptation to purchase immediately without considering long-term affordability is higher than ever, right? So when these services make purchases accessible, they often lead people into a cycle of debt, with monthly payments reducing available funds for saving, right? So since the impact of these purchases isn't felt immediately, it becomes easier to accumulate debt. Over time, these payments can pile up, hindering one's ability to save effectively and efficiently, right? So relying too much on these services can make budgeting difficult and encourage impulsive, unaffordable spending, right? So you're going to be on piles of debt by using if by misusing or not properly using all of these services there. If you use it optimally, it's going to be in your favor. We'll look at how that is. But if you're not able to do it when you're spending more than what you can afford simply because you have an option to buy now and pay later, you're only going to end up in debt and you're not going to be saving, right? So you're borrowing from your future cash flow, which is not the ideal approach to go about it. And the next one next one is the frictionless buying, right? Today, there is less friction between you and the apps and, making a decision to buy. So shopping now is just a click away, right? So platforms like Amazon, Zepto, Zomato, and other e-commerce apps, they made the buying process so seamless that we barely realize when we are spending. So with features like one-click purchases, saved payment information, and instant delivery, we face almost no barriers to buying what we want. And this was not the case, right? We don't feel any barrier to buying what we want and when we want. So this frictionless buying reduces the time that we use to think before spending, which often leads to impulse purchases and eats into money that could be saved. And small purchases actually add up. When you're buying something, it might seem like, oh, it's only 100 rupees, it's only 200, it's only 500. This is something that I can afford. It's only like 10,000. It's only 5,000 or something which I can afford. But all of these small purchases will actually add up. And given how easy it is to buy, you might end up spending more than what you intended to spend, right? So that is something this is one of the disadvantages of frictionless buying, right? And the next one is the need to stay up to date. So there is an inherent desire for many of us to stay updated with the latest trends, right? Something that we can see in terms of iPhone purchases. That's the example that I could think of, right? Whether be it not only that in terms of fashion, in terms of technology or lifestyle. So as the society increasingly values appearances and status, people might feel pressured to maintain a certain standard of living. So this desire can manifest in spending on high-end brands, regular travel, luxury experiences, all to present a particular image to the society, right? However, constantly trying to keep up can lead to unnecessary expenditures, drawing funds away from potential savings and investment goals, right? So all of these needs to be planned ahead and then saved ahead instead of spending on these might not actually be necessary to you because you already have it, but simply because this is the latest trend or this is the latest one, you might feel the pressure to buy it and you end up buying it and feel guilty about it, right? And this is something, the next one, of course, is something that all of us have noticed at some point in time, right? You have targeted ads, that is ads targeted to your needs, right? You might be surfing something on Amazon or any other e-commerce platform. And the moment you come out of it, you go through some other, browser, you'll be seeing advertisements of it, right? All over. Right. So you have all of this because of advanced algorithms that we have today. So the ads on social media and search engines are incredibly personalized, right? So these brands use targeted advertising to promote products that match individual preferences, see, often based on browsing history and online behavior. So this tailored advertising can make it challenging to resist purchases as the items being advertised are exactly what you're interested in, right? So these targeted ads encourage instant gratification, making us more likely to buy things that we don't really need, ultimately reducing the amount available for savings again, right? The next one is keeping the budgeting process, right? Many people skip budgeting, so they don't actually have a plan, right? Why do they skip budgeting? Primarily because they find it tedious or they believe that they have a good handle on their spending. However, budgeting is crucial for understanding where each rupee goes and ensuring that spending aligns with your savings goal, right? Without a budget, it's easy to overspend on discretionary items while neglecting savings and other essentials. So budgeting or the plan helps you provide clarity on expenses, allowing you to set realistic limits and prioritize savings, right? Skipping this step often leads to unmanaged spending and little left to save at the end of the month, right? So without budgeting, you're just going about spending money without a plan and without a goal, which is not the ideal approach to go about managing money, right? And while budgeting, one thing that we need to remember is savings comes first and spending comes next. We'll speak in detail about all of this in strategies. And the next one is instant gratification. So today we are in a fast-paced world, right? We are in a fast-paced digital age where people expect immediate results and they often prioritize short-term satisfaction over long-term benefits. So instant gratification drives people to make spontaneous purchases, valuing the immediate pleasure over the lasting securities of savings. So whether it's the latest phone or a weekend getaway, prioritizing these short-term rewards will hinder your ability to save, right? So this habit of seeking quick satisfaction can leave people with less money in the long run, making it harder to achieve larger financial goals. And the last one in the list is misunderstanding savings need. So some people think that saving simply means cutting back on spending or putting aside whatever is left after expenses. However, effective saving requires purpose and it needs a structure. So without an understanding of actual savings need, like building an emergency fund, investing for the future, or planning for large expenses, it's easy to save inadequately or inconsistently, right? So this misunderstanding can lead people to fall short of their financial goals as they're not saving intentionally or regularly enough to meet their long-term needs, right? Let's move to the next one. Yeah, so now we'll be looking at some strategies to save more, right? We have looked at some of the common mistakes and the reason behind why people don't save enough. So this is the data point that we'd like to highlight. So households have been borrowing at a faster pace than they have been saving since the COVID-19 pandemic. So as a result, that is, they're borrowing more than what they're saving, right? So as a result of this, the net household financial savings, that is gross financial savings adjusted for liabilities, is fallen. And this is government data up to fiscal 2023. So this is something that we need to look at because you're spending or you're borrowing more than what you're saving, right? So now how do we go about saving more? What are some strategies, practical steps that you can take so as to save more? So Aishwarya will be taking over that part.
Thank you, Abhishek. We'll now look at some strategies that one can follow to be able to save and manage money more efficiently. Of course, it goes without saying that the first step is definitely to set goals. We don't go about anything aimlessly. So it does not matter whether your goal is one huge end result or you have several small ones coming up. The important question that everybody needs to address is how much to save. This is a question that a lot of people don't have the answer to. So in order to be able to answer this question, it is important that you have goals that are, they're specific, they're achievable, they're relevant, they're measurable, and they're time bound. So we follow something called the SMART strategy to be able to save as much as we would like. It is important for us to be able to quantify these goals, and it has to be measurable, time bound, because you should have a plan in your head that, at the end of, say 6 months, I should have saved up so much, or at the end of 1 month, month on month, I should be able to save this much. So both the amount of money that you want to save and the time period within which you would like to save this amount has to be very clearly specified. So and by following a framework like SMART, it gives your financial goals a better structure with clear milestones and better actionable steps, and it makes the path to saving much more straightforward. Whether it is managing money or managing anything else in your life, it is very important to set goals. And especially because it's money, we have to be extra careful, right? The next essential thing that we have to look at is budgeting. In one of the previous slides, we spoke about how people, they avoid that step because they don't essentially know how much to save or what they should be ideally doing to be able to budget, and they don't have a clear plan and they just go about doing things. And they find themselves, in multiple traps and they're not able to get out of it. So it's more like a fish out of water situation. So what budgeting helps with is, creating and following a plan to, allocate your income wisely, which ensures a certain balance between your spending needs and your saving goals. You might have certain needs that come out of saving the money, but it's not essentially the same as your saving goals. So there has to be a clear distinction between spending needs and saving goals. Let's look at this illustration. So there are two individuals, A, B, and their net income is 90,000. They have their standard deductions of EPF. A has monthly expenses of 25,000. B has a monthly expenses of 50,000 along with an EMI of 10,000. This is where it is important for people to distinguish between a want and a need. We see that in A's case, he's prioritizing his wants, his needs. I beg your pardon. He's prioritizing his needs. And B is a little bit more lavish. He likes to spend a little bit more. He likes to splurge his money a little bit more. And he's prioritizing his wants. And out of the gross savings that come out after, these monthly expenses, they're both, A is looking at a monthly SIP, which is definitely a productive use of the savings, whereas B, does not want to productively use his money or put it into any sort of investment avenue. But at the end of it, both of them save a net amount of 26,400. What is important to look at here is the savings rate. They're both ending up with the same amount at the end, but the savings rate of A is significantly higher than that of B, primarily because of the productive use that the money is being put to, right? It is very easy for all of us to, spend the money that we have, but what is more important is to be able to productively use this money. So this comparison basically, emphasizes the importance of managing expenses and, of course, debt to be able to maximize somebody's potential for investing and saving. Next is credit cards. It has become, a very easy thing for all of us to just walk around swiping our credit cards left, right, and center without realizing the trap that we're all falling into. It is a fact that credit cards are a very convenient tool, and it helps us in multiple ways. It comes in handy quite often, when it gives us rewards and points and all of that. But it is very important to use it strategically to prevent accumulation of debt, right? We might see something, get tempted, might not have the money at the moment, but our immediate next thought is, okay, I have a credit card, I can pay for it later. But what happens is that later again, you don't have sufficient money, and you again end up swiping credit card yet again. So it is important to stop swiping and start saving. So treat your credit cards not as an extension of your income, but as a tool for convenience and occasionally, of course, for earning rewards. Because when you uncontrollably use your credit cards, it leads to high interest debt, and that can quickly erode your savings that you might, accumulate. So a very important part of saving and a very important strategy that everyone must follow in today's day and age is to stop swiping credit cards so often. So optimally using your credit cards is very, very important. The next one that we'll speak about is save first and spend next. This is something that we highlighted a little bit in the previous slides. What people often do is, they make the mistake of saving only what they have left after spending on everything else. And that's not the way that you go about your savings journey. The better approach to this would be to save first, allocate it to whatever you might want it for in the future, and then adjust your spending accordingly. What you do by doing this is that you're ensuring that you're regularly putting money aside and not compromising on your long-term financial needs. To be able to do this, like we discussed, it is important to automate your savings. So as soon as your salary gets credited, a portion of it gets automated and goes into savings, and you don't have to constantly think about where am I spending it, what am I spending it on. A portion of it just quickly goes into your savings account, and with due course, it'll show you results. So for example, you can maybe set up, an automated transfer or to move, a fixed amount, a fixed percentage of your income from your checking account to your savings or investment account right after your paycheck is credited. So effectively, you are prioritizing your financial and long-term goals. What this automation does is that it minimizes the temptation to spend the money elsewhere because it has already been allocated to your savings and you don't have to worry about it. Right. And by doing this, the next step would be, of course, to start investing immediately. Your money goes into your savings account And the next best thing to do would be to put it in, maybe an SIP or a lump sum, anything that will help you secure your financial future. You might want to speak to someone before you do it, before you, build a portfolio, design a portfolio, after analyzing the kind of investor that you are. And of course, lastly, avoiding impulse purchases. What we often do is that we walk out of the house without any intentions to buy anything. And then we end up seeing something and we just can't take our minds off it and we need to buy it. This practice is okay once in a while, but with the data that we get to see, it seems to be quite a frequent thing that's happening. So impulse purchases is one of the biggest drains of your savings, right? It will drain your pocket so much that even without realizing, at the end of it, you're not going to be left with anything. And the marketers today are very smart. So they make the product so attractive and they make it very easy to buy on a whim, through tactics like one-click purchases, limited offers, and personalized ads, that some people are not able to get over the temptation to want to buy something. So in order to be able to avoid this impulse purchasing, what we should all practice is something called the 30-day rule for delayed gratification. Delayed gratification is basically a practice that emphasizes the long-term rewards of saving and investing over the short-term satisfaction of spending. So you're giving up something in the short term to be able to enjoy something in the long term. And the 30-day rule is basically you do that for an entire month and you will definitely see results. It's basically a mindset that, strengthens financial discipline by teaching you to, resist immediate purchases and instead focus on the bigger financial picture. So say, for example, you're tempted to buy the latest iPhone that's come out in the market, but look at it as how much the money could grow, that money that you're spending on the phone. Imagine how much that amount could grow if it were invested in something. Right. So delaying the purchase allows you to consider your financial priorities and make more intentional spending choices. Right. So by practicing delayed gratification, it can also be seen as a way of paying yourself in the future. So you are essentially setting up for a better financial future for yourself and not for anybody else. By choosing to buy something now, you are not, sorry, let's put it this way. By choosing not to buy something now, you are gifting yourself financial security in the long term. Another thing that we should all avoid is, review our it is important for us to review our subscriptions. So we have to unsubscribe to save. We go on so many internet platforms, so many Instagram platforms, and we end up subscribing to so many and we get emails, we get attracted to those products that we see and we end up buying them. And half of those things we might not even need. When we look back in retrospect and we, take a look around the house, we see so many products that we don't essentially need. And those purchases came out of such well-marketed emails and, just hitting the subscribe buttons. So it is very important for all of us to review all the subscriptions and analyze what kind of subscriptions you have versus what you actually need. And by doing this, you end up saving a larger chunk of money than you would otherwise think. There are so many subscriptions that we don't even need, but it falls on our inboxes and we end up splurging money on it, and then we're left with nothing at the end of it. So reviewing these subscriptions is definitely a very good way to go about saving money. And a very interesting quote here is that spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. So what this quote is basically a reminder to prioritize financial health over the desire to impress others. We saw how in mimetic desires that we want to stay up to date and match up to other people's standards. So we end up spending more to be able to live and show off a certain way. But by doing so, we're leaving ourselves with nothing at the end of it. So we're avoiding these impulse purchases, keeping your spending intentional. You're allowing more of your income to go towards long-term wealth. So in conclusion, I would like to say that, saving isn't just about setting your money aside. It is about adopting a proactive mindset and making intentional choices with every paycheck, not just with every paycheck, but with every penny that falls in your account. And always remember that financial security comes with consistency, with discipline, and most importantly, prioritizing your future self. At a certain stage, you might be an individual. 2-3 years down the line, you might want a family, and you have to again be able to provide for them. And lavishly spending all of the money is definitely not going to help. So it is important to follow some of these strategies and grow your wealth in the long term to be able to provide for whatever that you might want to do in the future. Right? Whether you're just starting off or you're fine-tuning your approach to this, each step you take today, it will bring you closer to achieving your financial independence. And of course, peace of mind, which is what we all want at the end of the day. Nobody who is trapped in a cycle of debt is going to bed peacefully. Right? So let's commit to saving smarter and planning for a future where our finances enable freedom, choice, and opportunity. We hope we were able to give you an insight into some strategies that you may possibly want to take up to save your money and build your money in the long term. Thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll be happy to take them. And if you would like to get in touch with the team for anything, the contact is available on this slide. Feel free to reach out and somebody from the team will definitely get in touch with you. Okay, if there are no questions, then maybe we can close. Okay, we do have a question. I don't have any goals towards saving and so wanting to build a long-term corpus is in itself a goal. So by setting aside small amounts from today, you will be able to get to that goal. So whether it is one big goal or whether it's multiple small goals, it doesn't matter. It is very important to start your savings journey with a certain goal in mind. You don't just put money aside and not do anything about it, right? And some people end up putting money aside and they end up splurging. But what we are trying to sort of advocate here is to productively use the money that you're setting aside as savings, whether it is a small goal or one big goal. The best is to start investing if you want to increase your savings rate, and of course, cutting down on those expenses that are unnecessary for you. How to avoid impulse spending. This differs from individual to individual. Um, it might be initially difficult for you to resist, but it is very important that you do consciously. um, Sometimes you might see something and you're just itching to buy it, but you have to tell yourself and consciously cut back on those things. And that comes only with being conscious and being aware of yourself. There is no strategy to avoid impulse um, spending. It is self driven. For the same to mutual funds, stop PPF and start save. So maybe you can. This is more a one-on-one conversation. So maybe you can get in touch with somebody from the team, and we will gladly help you navigate through this. If you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box or the Q&A section. Yeah, sure. We will suggest you an alternative so you can get in touch with the team. Whether to have target portfolio return on savings, only on savings. This is a very interesting question. Focusing on savings is one, and focusing on a portfolio is another. What you save is what you put in the portfolio. So look at it as two different things. Set the goal of your savings amount, and then think about how big you want your portfolio to be and what kind of returns you want it to generate. That will be the next step. So it's always one step at a time, right? Okay, great. Since I don't see any more questions, maybe we can call it a day. If you have anything else that you'd like to ask us, feel free to get in touch, through the number that's given in the chat box, or on the slide that you can see, and somebody from the team will get in touch with you. Thank you for joining us this morning. We hope you had an informative session. We hope to see you all in the next webinar. Thank you so much.